Let's take a look at another simple use case where we create a file that is going to have both a named and a default export. We're going to create a user where this module will allow us to create a new user, but then it'll also have some utility methods to get the URL for that user's profile and generate a base64 encoded Gravatar URL. So let's go and make a new file, and we'll call that user.js. Now, inside of that, we have a function called user, and that will take in a name, an email, and a website for the person. And then we're simply just going to return an object that has their name, has their email, and has their website. Wes, what are you doing? Hopefully by now you're yelling at me and saying, Wes, if the property name and the variable that it's being set to are the same thing, we do not need to do that. This is an improvement on object literals. We can just put them all on a single line and return it there. Cool. So now we have that function for the user. Then let's create a function called create URL. And that is going to take in someone's name, and it's going to return to us something like site.com/Wes-boss, assuming my name was Wes Boss. So that is a function, and we need that Slugify plugin that we installed earlier. Let's look at our package.json. We installed this slug plugin. So I'm going to, now I'm not inside of app here, but if a module has a dependency on its own, you simply just import it. Import slug from slug. And this one doesn't need quotes around it. And here what we're going to do is we are going to return. Now we need that base URL. Where is that base URL? Well, it's in our config. There it is. So we can import that as well. Import URL from config. Don't need the JS. You see how we're just like deciding what we need? We go into the file that we need and we just pluck that one item that we need, even though we imported it into our main file right here, API key and URL. Doesn't mean that it's available in every other single module. If you need something twice, you import it twice. Don't worry, Webpack won't duplicate the code. It's smart enough to just import it actually once. So we have this import right here with our return in here. We have our URL, which is going to return the URL. And then we want to do /users/ and someone's actual name. So we can use the slug function and pass it the name that we get passed in. You see how we have a function here that pulls in a variable from another file and a function from an existing package. We use that right inside of there. Finally, let's use a gravatar. So function gravatar. And a gravatar is like a globally recognized avatar, and you can get anyone's avatar by if you know their email, and you just have to base64 encode it. So how is this going to work? Well, the way that a gravatar URL looks like is something like this. Photo URL equals, and it looks like that avatar, but on the end we have a base64 hash of their actual name. So we need a base64 library. Well, no problem. We'll go grab one from npm. Quit this, npm install base64 -- save. npm install base-64 -- save. Installs that module for us. And then I can import it here. Import base64 from base64. Now let's take a second. Why can't I just do that? Well, the creator of the base64 package, sorry, it's base-64, has created it for us so that they have exported it as a default. And then I can then go ahead and import it as anything I like. In this case, I'm using base64. And what we can do here is we'll say const hash equals base64 email. And we can make this a template string and pop in the actual hash. Cool. So we have two utility functions as well as the ability to create a username. Now we've like just made this module that does a bunch of stuff for us. And if we want to be able to use it in other files, we simply stick exports in front of them. So this is the main one. So I want that to be default. So I'm going to say export default function user. Good. Then these ones are just export and export. So these ones are named exports, and this one is the default. Now, if I go back to app.js, we can go ahead and start using it. I'm just going to get rid of this console log, get rid of this say hi, get rid of everything in here. We've got our imports, and we're going to import. Now, how do we do a default? Well, we could say import user from source/user. Good. But what if I also want to do named exports as well? Well, you can simply do this, comma, then do your curly brackets, and we want to import create URL and gravatar from those. And we're able to go ahead and start to use them just as we could want. So let's try it out. Let's first create a user object. So say const user equals new user, and you pass it Wes Boss. First thing, and the second thing that we need to pass it would be the email and then the website. boss@gmail.com, and then the website is wesboss.com. Let's console log the user. Actually, let's not call it user. Let's call it Wes, simplicity's sake. Now, you may notice that this takes a little bit longer this time, and that is because this slug library is actually fairly large because it does all of the languages. So you may want to find a slimmer slug library if you don't need all of the features for it. But if I open up my index.html now, we should see an object which has email, name, and website. Good. I'm happy with that. Now back here, let's try the create URL function. So we say const profile equals create URL, and we are going to pass it the wes.name. Make sure you console log profile as well. And refresh. Now we have the actual URL. That base is pulling from our config file, and this slug is pulling from that slug package that we use. Let's try the other one, gravatar. Const image equals gravatar wes.email. And we actually get an error here on line 14 of user.js, and it's base64.encode. The method is encode. And then we also have to return the photo URL from our actual function. Console log the image. And there we see a gravatar URL. So hopefully that shows you how you can use modules to just make nice and tidy code bases, put your functions inside of their own files. And then if you ever wanted to use these functions in other files, you could put them on NPM yourself. You could share them amongst your coworkers, and they're much more easily testable.